All right, so boys, I've just broken this in two. So this is the next bit of the video, so the last 5 or 10 minutes of this article. We're seeing significant overuse injuries caused by these types of behaviours, says Cheat. Parents who encourage their children to dedicate themselves to these professionalised training programs are facilitating harm without realising it. This is when they're adolescents, so much is going on in their bodies, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and some of the workloads they're doing is criminal in my view. ACC figures released in June last year revealed a 60% surge in sports-related injuries in the 10 to 14-year age group since 2008, double the increase of any other age group. Isaac Carlson, ACC's head of injury prevention, said there's a growing concern that too much sport may be just as harmful for kids as not getting enough exercise. More structured sports training and competitions means kids are being exposed to higher intensity, higher volume training from an earlier age, which can increase the risk of repetitive overuse and fatigue-related injuries, says Carlson. Too much intensity training reduces the energy available for growth and development. This can not only affect peak bone mass and the onset of puberty, but a number of important body systems which have lifelong consequences for injury and physical and mental illness. The sharp increase prompted ACC to develop a new set of guidelines for age-appropriate levels of physical activity. The organisation is encouraging parents to follow a guideline of 1 hour for every year in age, where the amount of organised sport per week, both training and competition, should not exceed their child's age. This will encourage kids to grow a love of sport and physical activity without sidelining them with injuries or potentially breaking them in the process, says Carlson. Getting the ball rolling. Sport NZ isn't just working with other government agencies. They've enlisted the help of the country's major sports to present a united front in the fight to address the negative influence that are driving kids out of sport. In September, 5 national sports organisations, NZ Rugby, NZ Cricket, Netball New Zealand, NZ Football and Hockey New Zealand, signed a statement of intent laying out a new approach to youth sport. The principals agreed to include providing leadership within their respective sports to support changes to competition and player development opportunities, working with schools and sports to keep minds open when identifying talent in teen years, raising awareness of the risks of overtraining and overloading, and supporting young people to play multiple sports. Part of the problem is sports don't want to share, says Lee Ashton, author of The Talent Trap, an insight into the competition and chaos of youth sport. Rugby is worried about basketball, which is worried about volleyball, which is worried about water polo, which is worried about rowing, which is worried about cycling. So these sports want to keep other sports from stealing their best talent by getting them on the pathway early. And often their way of keeping athletes involved is by making bold promises to the kids and their parents, which is not good. Cheat admits Sport NZ hasn't always helped the situation. He says the government agency created an ecosystem where sports were in competition with one another to drive up their participation numbers, but there is growing recognition that this approach is not serving anyone's interests. Over the past 6 years, the National Netball NZ body has been working to implement a raft of new initiatives aimed at ensuring all young players have positive experiences in the game. The revamp comes after the 2012 review of its junior programs. That review revealed netball had a major problem. In the previous 10 years, the number of players in years 7 and 8, that's the intermediate age in old money, had dropped by 15%. The stats also indicated that 10 to 14-year-olds were the most injured age group. Netball NZ set about overhauling the junior formats, introducing a modified version of the game through its Future Ferns program. The focus, says Stanley, was ensuring kids were learning the skills of the game in an age-appropriate way. The big shift came in 2017 when netball centres around the country, decidedly less public scrutiny than their rugby counterparts 2 years later, began to remove under 13 rep teams. Stanley says the biggest advantage of the new format is that it allows regions to capture more young players. So instead of 12 kids in a centre getting the opportunity to be part of a rep program and learning all those skills about motivation and confidence and developing physical skills, we've had centres that are now providing that for up to 120 kids, says Stanley. There's quite a lot of evidence that highlights if kids miss selection or are deselected, they have a mindset that they're never going to be good enough and they won't keep playing or they won't keep trying. The learnings, to use popular sporting parlance, from Netball New Zealand's overhaul of its youth program is helping inform how Sport NZ and other national sporting organisations deliver programs. The resources and the commitment it takes from the sports to make this happen is huge, says Chi. Sports are seeing different ways they can do things, but getting buy-in from their stakeholders is the challenging part.